All right, friends, our guest for the conversation today serves with a ministry right here in Elkhart. Now, it's a ministry focused on reaching the youth. They go into schools with after-school programs. They also have a construction program. They teach kids trade skills, and they introduce them to Jesus in the process. This is Lifeline Youth Ministries right here in Elkhart.
Our guest is also the Assistant Executive Director of this ministry, and his heart is for reaching youth for Jesus. We're talking to David Gaona today. My name is Mike Tapia.
And I'm Cody Hall.
This is the Go and Send podcast. All right, David, good to have you here with us, man. Mm-hmm. I just want to open up with a question.
Okay.
Why are you passionate about youth ministry?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when I think about youth ministry, I think about the future, right? And our responsibility as believers to pour into the next generation. And we have to set up the next generation right? And hopefully set their foundation built on what is truth, which is Jesus. And I'm passionate about them getting to know who Jesus is and building their lives around Jesus so that then they could impact their next generation. At Word of Life, the founder of Word of Life, Jack Wyrtzen, had a quote that said, it is a responsibility of every generation to reach their generation. So I think, when I think about youth ministry, I just want to reach that generation so that they can reach their generation.
Praise the Lord. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah. So you're in Lifeline Youth Ministries. Like this is right now your career, your focus. That God's put you in this place. What is Lifeline Youth Ministries? What are they doing? What are they about?
Yeah, so Lifeline, we're located in Elkhart, Indiana, and we've been a part of the Elkhart community for over 60 years. It started in 1963 by a guy named Irv Polk. And Irv, he had just a passion for youth. At the beginning of the ministry, it was students that were court-ordered to be at Lifeline. And if you were to drive around Elkhart, you would hear a lot of different stories from people that came to Lifeline in that time frame. And it's cool to listen to stories about Irv and how Irv impacted their lives. Nowadays, Lifeline is really known for their after-school programming and providing after-school programs for students for 1st through 12th grade. But outside of that, we have different avenues that we reach youth. We have a construction program where we work with students and teach them construction. And then we mentor them, and they kick a career after they graduate. We have a t-shirt business where, again, we're teaching youth how to do embroidery, screen printing, digital graphic design, and again, they get a career right after they graduate. So we have those avenues. We also have an avenue where we go into the juvenile detention center and do a program there. We have a diversion program, which is still court-ordered students that come to Lifeline, which that's what Irv started, and we're still continuing that. So yeah, we're just reaching youth in many different ways. First of all, for Jesus, but also to help them in their life after when they become adults.
That's awesome. It's like a holistic approach.
Yes, absolutely. And that's really important to us.
Yeah.
The holistic. We don't want to just come. We obviously want them to be saved, and we want them to know about Jesus, but we also want them to know basic life skills, right? We want them to know what it means to live as an adult, because a lot of our students, they don't know what that means, or they've never had that positive influence that has taught them that. So if we as believers can come around them and teach them these basic life skills, they're gonna be set up spiritually, but also for the rest of their lives.
That's awesome.
I always think like Lifeline's an amazing ministry. The impact it has in Elkhart. Living in Elkhart, I get encouraged sometimes because I'm driving down the road and I'll see some kids walking to school and they got a Lifeline hoodie on. I'm like, oh, that's so cool! Like the impact that the ministry's having in this community for Jesus, it's amazing. And so cool. I enjoyed being part of it for just a little piece. I got to do one of the after school programs. So.
Yeah, and it's amazing because when you were a part of it, it's now so different. I think if you were to come now to one of our programs, it's way different than when we used to do it at the school. And I would say we have grown in the consistency. Yeah, our students need consistency, and providing the same people every day. They come to our building and it's the same leader. They're with the same leaders every day for the whole year. And then for our summer camp, all these students that come to our after school programs, they come to our summer camp. So they're surrounded by positive influence that believe in Jesus for all year long, and then for years at a time, because we see these students grow up. I think I was just telling somebody that the group that I started with when I first came to Lifeline, they're graduating now. And I've seen them all grow up.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that the relationships that I have, and it's that consistency of me being here for about 9 years now.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that I get to be a part of their lives. And I would say our staff would probably say the same thing.
That's incredible. And thinking like, okay, IRF started it back in the 60s.
Yeah.
Just the longevity of the ministry.
Absolutely.
And I think you guys are, you're agile as well. Like, so you're willing to evolve as the
Yes.
needs change.
Yeah.
You're willing to evolve as, the society changes. And I think, but keeping that core, keeping that core of Jesus is the focus, and we're going to help these kids learn skills, but be introduced to Jesus as well. That's phenomenal.
We always say the methods are always changing, but the message is always the same. Yeah, the message.
true.
The message has to always stay the same, and you have to change with every generation, right? You have to know, okay, how am I going to reach that person? Because generations are always changing. The culture is always changing. So how are we going to what are we going to use to reach this culture, right? But always being focused on the end goal, sharing Jesus, right? The message is always going to be the same, which is the gospel.
Sure. So you've been on staff with Lifeline for a number of years.
Yes.
What is it you're doing now?
Yeah. So my technical title is Assistant Executive Director right now. And that encompasses quite a bit of things, just kind of running the day-to-day, all of our programming, our staff, and just making sure that I think the thing that I love is making sure that all of our programmings are staying on focus, right? And making sure that we're driving the mission, which is to share Jesus and providing a safe place for students where they know that they're loved. And our staff does an amazing job. I hear it from a number of kids that when they come in, they feel loved. And it's because our staff is intentional in making sure that we know the kids' names. We know that we're saying hi to them every time they come in, and we're having intentional conversations with them.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Assistant Executive Director, that sounds maybe like you're being prepared for something.
Yeah. You're right on. Yeah. So in April of 2026, I'll be the Executive Director. And right now I'm going through that transition role where I'm just being trained and just getting equipped to take on that role.
That's awesome. I mean, I think for a top leader like that or a higher level leader, your focus on the mission is crucial. I think you've already expressed that. So that's excellent. So that's kind of like the present day, right? But David Guyona, you went through a story, everybody has a story and how God brought them to where they're at. Would you take us back to your upbringing and share a little about ministry? Maybe how were you involved in ministry growing up? What was your family situation like?
No, that's a great question. And man, every time I think about just the past, it always gets me emotional in the sense of, man, the Lord is so good. The Lord is amazing, and the way He has worked in my family, I'm just so grateful, and His grace is amazing. Just because of where we were and where we're at now, But when I was about 6 years old, that's when I think those were like really hard years in terms of at that point in life, my parents weren't at church. They didn't know about Jesus. They would have considered themselves Catholic, but in the Hispanic culture, you can call yourself Catholic, but you don't really go to church. You're not involved or anything like that. And
religion with that relationship.
Yes, it is very much religion. And so that's all I knew, in terms of a God and Jesus. But there was chaos at home too, where my dad wasn't the best dad at that time, and so I saw a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have seen at those moments, and I experienced some things that I still have to deal with to this day. From people that did stuff to me, and I was exposed to things that I shouldn't have seen at that young age. But praise the Lord that at that age, at 6. while all this chaos was going on in my household, and I felt like I was growing up maybe too fast, right? There was a neighbor who would tell my mom to come to this Christian church, but my mom would deny her because she was Catholic, and she would say, "No, that's a Christian church. I'm not gonna go to a Christian church. I'm a Catholic." And eventually, my mom decided to say yes, and that was because I ended up going to the Vacation Bible School with this neighbor. And at the end of Vacation Bible School, they give like awards to the kids, and it's like a big celebration. So the pastor actually told my mom, "Hey, David's getting an award. You should come and support him." Yeah,
Gotta see him get a reward. Yeah.
And so my mom actually tells me, I don't even remember this, but my mom tells me this, that the pastor told her that every day at Vacation Bible School, that when they would ask for prayer requests, that I would ask for prayer for my dad, which I don't remember that, honestly, but my mom says that. Anyways, my mom ends up going to the church because I'm getting an award, and the pastor shares the gospel. That's the first time my mom ever heard the gospel in its fullness. And she will say that at that moment is when she believed in Jesus, and her whole life just completely changed. Just amazing. Wow. So myself and my two younger sisters, that's how we started going to church. And my dad, again, at that time, he wasn't following Jesus, and so he wouldn't take us to church. It was actually that neighbor. She was the one that would take us to church because my mom didn't have a vehicle at that time. So every Wednesday and Sundays and Sunday nights, we would be at church, and this lady who was faithful took us to church every Wednesday and Sundays, and I'm just so grateful for that, because that's how we got exposed to church, to Jesus. And I remember that because it was so chaotic at home, that when I would go to church, and specifically worship, during worship, I would feel this peace. I would feel so much peace, just and I would sing as a little boy. I would sing the worship songs, and I would feel this overwhelming peace. Again, with everything going on at home, that was a peaceful place for me. So that's how we got, exposed to the gospel and to the Lord.
Wow, that's like amazing. And whenever you hear this, you hear the Lord taking somebody, right, who was dead apart from Christ, and bring them to a new life. It's a miracle that takes place, right?
Yeah.
And just like the impact of that. And then I can't help but think in that story too, just like the people that the Lord's using in your life too, like this faithful lady just next door. Like how many people have a neighbor? I think a lot of us have neighbors, right? Like what's that impact of just reaching out to your neighbor, and like lives changed, right? Through Jesus, right? Jesus alone can do this. But that's amazing to hear that story, David. Yeah, it's like, whew.
Yeah, and it wasn't like, yeah, you're right. It wasn't somebody who's working in ministry, quote unquote, right? It was just a neighbor who invited us to church. And just kept insisting on it, just, hey, do you want to come to church? And not just that, but they built her and my mom built a great friendship. And she would have her over at the house all the time. And so it wasn't just inviting her to church, it was also building that relationship with my mom. So,
Wow.
Also, like, not underestimating the impact of these VBS ministries and these youth ministries.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I've been involved in helping with VBSs before. And sometimes it can be a little hard. Like, you're like, oh, I'm tired. These kids are crazy. Or like, oh, how do I do this each day after work? But even that, like, the Lord using that and working in people's lives, and like your family is like the fruit of a VBS ministry. That's
I
amazing.
feel like sometimes we feel like we have to do something big, but it's in the little things. We have to just be faithful in the little things, and the Lord will bless it. We don't have to prepare to be on a platform. We don't have to prepare to preach on a big stage. No, it's just being faithful in your everyday, ordinary life. And I feel like that's what the Lord has called all believers, right? Just be faithful in where you're at. Whether you're working in a factory, whether you're just in your neighborhood, just be faithful there.
So I know you've shared in the past about after your mom got saved, God transformed her life, and then she was a foundation for you. I mean, she supported you in a number of ways in your growth in the Lord.
Yeah.
You have some stories maybe as to her impact on you after she understood the gospel, believed, and started serving the Lord. How did that go?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that a lot of my faith has been formed because of my mom and seeing her faith. After she believed in Jesus, you can just see that the Holy Spirit was inside of her and dwelling in her, and there was a fire for the gospel. Right after she got saved, she started going to the different Mexican stores here in Elkhart, and she would stand outside of the Mexican stores and then would hand out the gospel message to the people as they were going into the store, and then she would just share the gospel with people and pray with people. Wow. And she would just do that on her own. Like, she didn't go with a group. She would just wanted to do it. Yeah. So she would leave us at home, and then she would drive to the stores and do that ministry. Wow. And she loved it. She's an evangelist for sure. Yeah. So she loved that, and as a child, thinking back to that, I thought it was weird. But now that I'm a grown up, it's like, man, Mom had so much courage. That's so much courage right there to just do it by yourself. Because a lot of times, those are uncomfortable, right? Yeah. Evangelizing, open air evangelism can be uncomfortable. Right. And my mom, just as a new believer, as a baby believer, was doing that. Wow. So that was just amazing. And yeah, just another thing, her time with the Lord was just so consistent. And I would wake up early in the morning, and she was already on her knees in the living room praying, and reading her Bible. And that has really impacted my life, and just the importance of spending time with Jesus daily, and making time for him, and waking up early and making that a priority. And that's something that she instilled in us and my siblings and I, like, hey, no, spend time with Jesus. And that has been very, very influential in my life, just seeing her. And those are things that I apply to my life now, where those are the types of things that I want to instill in my daughter and my kids. And because even now, like, because of that, I love when my daughter wakes up and she sees me read my Bible. I want her to see me. Yeah. My wife as well. We were talking maybe like 2 weeks ago, and I was saying, maybe you can do your quiet time while she naps. And she's like, I could, but I really want her to see me spending time with Jesus, because I want her to know that, hey, Mom is spending time with the Lord. And my wife will tell our daughter, hey, go play in your room because it's Mommy's time to spend time with Jesus right now. So my daughter's hearing that already, and that's the culture of our household, and that started because of my mom. Wow. My mom she has a huge influence in my faith.
That's awesome.
And like your mom comes to know the Lord, and there's a little bit of span there, I guess, where the rest of your family is still kind of wrestling with, what do they believe about Jesus? Yeah. But how does that ultimately play out in your family? Like I remember hearing a little bit that your whole family comes to the Lord, but how did that take place?
Yeah, so my dad, a few years later, he got into this car wreck, and it had been 8 years since my mom gave her life to Jesus. So my mom had been praying for my dad for 8 years. Wow. And almost a decade. Yeah, and eventually my dad got to this car wreck, and then he believed in Jesus. And again, it was a huge transformation. So my dad is also now living faithfully for the Lord, and which is just really, awesome. Really amazing. Yeah. So my whole family, they're all believers. They all love Jesus. And again, I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord.
So then from that point, you were growing up right here in Elkhart.
Yep.
And on the south side, right? South side of Elkhart.
I would hang out a lot on the south side. Yeah, I didn't necessarily live on the south side, but this is where I would hang out most of my days.
Sure. So like through middle school, high school, did you have some influences in your life, like outside of your parents or your family, that were good gospel influences, and specifically, guys that would mentor you or guys that would disciple you, and then kind of leading into where you went for your education?
Well, when I was in middle school and high school, I would say that was like my rebellious time, where even though I knew about Jesus, I knew he was real. I never doubted his existence. But the temptation to try to be like everybody else was there. And I fell into that temptation.
Yeah.
Because I craved to be wanted by the kids at my school, right? I craved to want to be like everybody else. I wanted the friends. I wanted to feel like I belonged, right? And I fell into that temptation. And so one day, and I remember this specifically, I decided, because I'm the type of guy that when I'm all in into something, I'm going to be all in. So if I was going to be all in into following Jesus, I was going to be all into that. Yeah. But if I was going to be all in into being bad, I was going to be all in into being bad. So so at that point, I remember this, like I stopped going to church. Like I told my parents, I don't want to go to church anymore. And I was purposely rebelling against the Lord, and started following my own desires and my own flesh, and started being influenced by the world, and that caused me to get into the drugs, into the gangs at that time, and all those things have consequences, right? Where it starts out as, man, I just want to belong somewhere, to, oh man, I have to watch my back because I don't know who's going to come and try to beat me up or try to shoot me or things like that. So everything went from me just trying to find identity to things going pretty serious, But again, the consequences of all that is following your own way. It just leads to emptiness, right? And those things never satisfy. The drugs, they never satisfy. The girls, they never satisfy. Your friends, they turn their back on you, right? Friendships are not perfect. Yeah. And all the things that I thought I wanted all failed me, and they all left me pretty empty. And I was at a crossroads where it felt like I was at a pit. I had dug my own hole, and I had dug it pretty deep, and I couldn't get out of it. And at that point, the only person that could get me out of it was Jesus, and I knew that. Yeah. So one day after that, I repented, and I knew I had to reach out to Jesus, and I did. And I went to Jesus and I told him I wanted to change. And at that time, again, my parents and my family is all living for the Lord. I was the one that was rebelling. Yeah. And so I made my family suffer a lot during that time. It was some long years for them. And when I was home, it was just chaos. Because they were all showing me love, but I hated it. I was always angry around them because they were so full of the love of Jesus, and I hated that. So at home, I didn't even have a relationship with any of my family members because I was always just angry. Didn't really want to talk to them. I spent a lot of time in my room, and if I did talk to them, it was always like I would just start arguments, But because I was in darkness, I was in darkness, and they were so full of light, and I didn't want the light. So yeah, I caused a lot of problems at that time in my household, and when I decided to follow Jesus, that it was around midnight one day. I went and knocked on my parents' door. They were sleeping, and I went to them like, all right, I'm ready. I'm ready.
It's like, can't even wait for the morning. Yeah. Like, it's midnight. We gotta. Yeah. So what's going through your mind then? Like, so then it's just this gradual realization that these things are not going to satisfy. What are you, like 19 at this time, or
yeah?
Okay, 19. Like 19. These things aren't satisfying, and you need to make a change. Is that it just kind of hit you at that point? Was it gradually kind of?
Yeah, it was gradually. Like I had been feeling depressed. I felt the loneliness. I felt the emptiness. But I was stubborn and didn't want to turn to Jesus. But I knew I needed Jesus. And instead of turning to him, I would do more drugs. And I wasn't doing the drugs because it was fun anymore. I was doing the drugs to cover up the pain or the emptiness.
Yeah.
I started drinking more. I started doing other drugs, just to cover it all up.
Yeah.
But again, none of that satisfies. And my friends and I would go to parties, and we would go to different nightclubs and stuff. I would be surrounded by hundreds of people. And I remember that I would just stand there and I would feel so alone. And then I was probably high or drunk, and I would stand there and I would see everybody having a great time, but I wasn't. I was literally just standing there. I was like the party pooper but again, it was just like so unsatisfying. And when I look back at that, I was like, man, it was so much darkness.
Yeah.
So much darkness at that time. And I think my friends could tell that I was changing at that point, because I wasn't having fun anymore.
Yeah.
It was like I was just that depressed guy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then Lord gets a hold of your heart, and man, I can't help but get excited when I hear that story, David. Like the way that God snatched you, man, out of some of that, even just that difficult situation you were in, and just also just like how the Lord, I can't help but thinking where you're at now too, and how the Lord even has this in your background, but like the way that now you can minister to some of these youth in Elkhart. You grew up in it, you knew the situations they were facing. You were in the same temptations that they were facing, and now the ministry that the Lord's given you in this is like, wow, it's just it's powerful.
Yeah, and that's why that's where I'm so passionate about what I do. Yeah, that's why it's so important that we're providing a space at Lifeline.
Yeah.
Where we can talk to kids about these things.
Yeah.
And,
wow. So you come to Christ. You're 19. What's now going through your mind? Like, what are you starting thinking? I know that now you're starting to think about what's after high school. What's the next steps? What are you going to do? How is that develop?
Yeah. So I start following Jesus, start going to church with my parents, and at that point I'm just working a factory job, and man, so much temptation was going on at that time. Trying not to be a part of the world anymore. But having all these people still trying to get me to be a part of the world. It was a very difficult time and just growth. And the pastor at the church that I was going to, he had graduated from a Bible institute called Word of Life. And Word of Life is just nationwide, worldwide, sorry. And they have different Bible institutes and Bible youth camps all over the world. And anyways, he had graduated from the one in Argentina, Word of Life Argentina. And there's a New York campus in upstate New York in the Adirondack Mountains that he told me about. He said, hey, you should go and apply for this Bible school in upstate New York. And at this point, I didn't have the funds to pay for college. And he just told me, just apply and we'll see. The Lord will provide if he wants you to go there. But the Lord's grace, again, huge miracle. I was able to go for 2 years. I wish I shouldn't have gone for 2 years. I didn't have any income to be able to do that, and the Lord provided for me to go to 2 years at Word of Life, which was really, really foundational. And you're just surrounded by people, other young people that love Jesus, that want to be there, that want to learn about the Bible, and you're in community, and you're all learning the same things together. You're all working assignments together, you're all doing ministry together, and you're all just living life together for 2 whole years. And then there's youth camps too, like there's a winter camp and then there's summer camp. and you're working those, and yeah, those were very two foundational years of my life right there.
So thinking about those 2 years, I mean, obviously there's the foundational doctrinal, right, education and the instruction, pretty rigorous, but it was very practical. It's very hands-on.
Yes.
Like you did this ministry frequently, like so on a regular basis, and then you're doing these camps. How did that and what you learned there, how did that prepare you for what you're doing now? I think there's some significant connections there, right?
Yeah. Well, their whole the way they do camps is all for youth. You know, so that's so it prepared me specifically for what I am doing, and it teaches you specifically how to do youth ministry, how to share the gospel with the next generation, and they do such, like we were just talking about, the methods. You know, they have different methods of reaching youth. Word of Life does a very good job at adapting to what is the youth gonna want? You know, how are they gonna have fun? And they use those things to be able to share the gospel with these students. So so it prepared me a lot to think about Lifeline in the same manner. You know.
So obviously the Lifeline is, you know, a nonprofit organization. The church, you know, Jesus' Great Commission, Matthew 28, he deploys the church to go, and the church is ultimately like a global organization. I think here at Sunset, we would say that, you know, the church is primary, like in the way God's work gets done, the way the kingdom advances globally. And then organizations can assist and can fill in gaps, you know, and can help plug believers in local churches in. I know you guys are actually hosting a church plant in your building, right? What role does the local church have in Lifeline, and how do you see that relationship?
Yeah, well, the whole purpose of the church that we have at Lifeline is we really wanted a church where our families, our Lifeline families, can be plugged into, and so our kids, the kids can come to Lifeline throughout the week, but then as a family, they can come to church on Sundays, and that's kind of like the vision of it, to plug those families in there, and it's not going to be an environment that they don't know, right? Because they know Lifeline already, they know the building, so it can be a comfortable space for them. Oh yeah, I'll go check out the church at Lifeline. Yeah, you know, and because we believe that we should be plugged into a local church. We should be serving in a local church and being surrounded by believers. You know, so that's kind of like the whole purpose of the church at Lifeline. But overall, man, church is very important for our staff and interns in terms of that's where we build community, right? That's where we can go to other believers and get encouraged and be a part of small groups and have just the outlet, you know, to be able to because the Lifeline ministry is difficult, you know, so that's an outlet where we can go to our other to our church family and be able to pour out what's been going on throughout the week, praying for one another, and just building that community. Yeah, so yeah, church is very, very important.
Yeah, church has got to play a role in ministry, and I love how you guys open up your facility for the church, and how that does, like, I can see how that would contribute to like these families who maybe aren't used to going to church, and now they can plug right in and be like, I'm kind of used to this building. I can go here, and that's actually a really neat model that you guys have for that, and inviting the church to come into your facility. Yeah. Just a question, like, too, and you're learning all these biblical foundations at Word of Life, you know, and realizing the importance of the church, and realizing, you know, just the importance of different ministry, and you're learning all these great skills. What kind of then plays into your thought of, hey, I should go back to Elkhart and do ministry? Because obviously, you know, you're in this Bible education, you have a lot of opportunities at that point. Maybe you go be a pastor in another state, or you go do something. You could have did a lot of different options. What was kind of calling you to then come back to Elkhart?
That's a great question. As soon as I get to Word of Life, the Lord put a burden on me to come back to Elkhart, and I knew specifically to work with youth and kids. But I had no idea what that was going to look like. He had burdened me with going into the schools And in my head, I'm like, Lord, how am I even going to go into a school? So I can't just walk into a school and say, hey, can I talk to your kids about Jesus? You know, and but for 2 years, I wrestled with the Lord because I knew I had to come back to Elkhart and work with youth, but I just had no idea how I was going to do that. And the interesting thing is that growing up in Elkhart and where the Lifeline building was at, I would hang out around that area. I just never heard of Lifeline, which it's crazy to think about. And now that I work at Lifeline, some of my friends that I would hang out with, they said, oh yeah, I would go to Lifeline. And I'm like, where was I? Where was I? And they never told me about it. But anyways, I'm at Bible college wrestling with the Lord, and it's about, my second year is about to end. And like you're saying, I'm having these offers to go church plant in New York City, to be a youth pastor, and just these different opportunities that I could have done. And I turned them all down, even though these were specific opportunities. And I turned them down, and I would tell them, yeah, I'm supposed to go to Elkhart. The Lord is calling me back to my hometown. And they would ask me, what are you going to do? I'm going to work with youth. But I just didn't know with who or how I was going to do that. I just knew that I needed to go back to Elkhart. So it was my second year, and then we had summer camp. And I was at the summer camp for high schoolers on an island. It's called The Island. And Daryl Peterson, who is the executive director of Lifeline, he brings students from Lifeline to the island, to upstate New York, for this summer camp. It just so happened to be, and this was not planned, but I was in charge of some counselors, and my unit was put in charge of Lifeline. And so one of my counselors one day, he calls me and says, hey, we have a situation down here with the Lifeline group. And so I go down and try to figure out what's going on. And throughout that, I meet Daryl. And as we start talking, we ask each other, hey, where are you from? And we're like, oh, Elkhart. And he's like, Lifeline's in Elkhart. And then we start talking about Lifeline. And I was like, what is Lifeline? And he starts telling me, well, we work with youth on the South Side. I'm like, okay. And then he was saying, yeah, we do after-school programs in the schools, and we're able to go into the schools, and we're able to mentor kids. And I'm like, at that point, it was literally everything that the Lord had been burdening me with for the past 2 years was answered in one conversation. In one conversation. That's right there.
Wild to think that. So you're feeling the call, like Lord saying, you need to go back to Elkhart and minister. And but you don't even know Lifeline exists. And like you grew up there, and it was obviously existent when you were there, but that's wild, right?
Yeah.
How the Lord uses that. He brings somebody from Elkhart to Word of Life to say, hey, here's the ministry. Wow.
Yeah. So I graduate September of 2016 or August 2016 and start working at Lifeline in September of 2016. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So at Lifeline, now you've had close to nine years at Lifeline and the ministry there. What kind of are you seeing, like, in the impact that the ministry is having, just from what you've seen, maybe different programs that you guys are working on? Is there a particular program that's been really interesting or encouraging that you've kind of been seeing? Well,
I would say all of our programs are always super encouraging, and just seeing the fruit of it, whether it be our after-school programs or construction program or t-shirt program. But here just recently we launched a program at the Juvenile Detention Center. And we go into the Juvenile Detention Center once a week. And most of the students that are in there come from the south side of Elkhart. So that's why we do that. And it's like a bridge. Sometimes we have students in there that we know already, and then there's sometimes students that we don't know, but but the students that are in there, we can tell them, hey, after you get out, you can come to Lifeline and join us. So we're like that bridge. We also have a diversion program, which is court-ordered students that are required to come to Lifeline. And it's like a 6-week program, but the goal with that is when they're finished with their 6 weeks, they will remain at Lifeline. And that's something that we tell them. We're like, hey, after you get done with your required 6 weeks, you can still stay here. Like, you don't have to leave. And we have seen so much success through that, in terms of about 75% of the students that have come through that program are staying now for regular after school programming.
Excellent.
But it's all connected in terms of, so that we'll meet a student at the juvenile detention center. After that student gets out, they're required to come to the diversion program. And then that student goes to Elkhart Academy, which is the school we work with for our construction program and our embroidery program. And so they find out that we have a construction program, and so they'll join the construction or the t-shirt business. And then they come to our after school program. So it's all all the programming that we do, it's all connected. Yeah. So that's been very, very encouraging.
Now, one of the acronyms we've seen is TBRI.
Yeah.
And that's trust-based relational intervention.
Yeah.
That's core to Lifeline's approach. What's that about?
Yeah, so TBRI, it's a training that we do. It's based out of Texas Christian University. And it's just a form of how you work with kids with trauma. And they really focus on connection, empowerment, and correction. And I feel like we do connection really well because it's all about building relationships, building a student that comes from trauma. They just need strong relationships, and that's what we do. But these students also need to be empowered. How can we empower them? A lot of times what people try to do because they have just such a good heart, they just try to, when we see students that are struggling or that don't have financial means, right? We just try to give them all that instead of empowering them, right? And so it really focuses on connecting, empowering our students, and teaching them how to do different things, life skills and things like that, how to regulate their emotions, but also how to correct them in the right manner. Because working with a student from trauma, correction has to be done differently. And that side of things has really impacted me, because at home the way their parent corrects them might be through yelling and screaming, right? Yeah. So they're used to that. So if we use those same types of tactics, it probably won't work. Right. So that's TBRI, and it has really shifted the way we do correction, the way we empower our students. And I feel the connection part, that's the easiest because we're all about relationships. So we've been doing that forever.
Yeah. One thing I think about in Lifeline, it just all the work that you guys are doing with the youth and next generation, like even in this, conversation space on this podcast, what we're trying to do is motivating and mobilizing the next generation into ministry. Yeah. And it's kind of a huge focus of your guys' work is pouring into the lives of these youth. And, as you're pouring into the lives of these youth, they're going to become, next generation of Christ followers, and what ministries the Lord's calling them to, and how they're being used. And you're a testimony to that. I'm being a youth in Elkhart and now in this youth ministry. And there's different interesting, ways to reach these youth. And I liked what you said. You said, methods change, but the message doesn't change, right? And there's different ways to reach the next generation. But the message is true that, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, right? And what he's done on the cross, what's been accomplished in his death and his resurrection, right? And this message doesn't change, but the methods to reach people can change it. And I know one of the outreaches you had, I think is very interesting, kind of innovative, different kind of approaches is stuff that you guys do in the juvenile detention center. So you guys, what are you guys doing with like musicians coming in and doing some of this stuff to reach out to the youth there? Yeah. So one of the things that has really impacted me is music. Yeah. So one of the things when I got saved is that beforehand I was just listening. I love hip hop. But hip hop influenced me a lot, and I knew I had to stop listening to secular hip hop when I got saved. Sure. And then when I ended up at Word of Life,
because I didn't want to listen to hip hop anymore. All I was listening to was like worship music, which is great, and I love it. But I missed hip hop, you know. I missed it. Sure. And one of my roommates, he introduced me to Christian hip hop. And the first song I ever heard was by Triple E, called Sweet. And
I know it.
and after that, that's where I'm like, man, this is good. This is good. And that's when I started digging in and started listening to Lecrae and KB and all those guys. And now I'm a big, like, I follow the Christian hip hop movement, and it has just grown so much, and it is quality music, and it's pretty amazing. And because of that, I see how music influences our kids. I know what they're listening to, and what they're listening to is garbage, honestly.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to expose them to something. Hey, this is hip hop, but it's good hip hop, and it has a good message. And I wanted to really expose them to the Christian hip hop, because a lot of times what happens is that when I tell them, hey, listen to Christian hip hop, immediately they'll just think of, oh, that's corny. You know, that's not good. So last year what we did, we put on a concert, and the headliner was a guy named Breno from Michigan. And I would encourage everybody to just take a look, listen to him. He's a really, really great artist. Great music, but great message, you know. And we had him come and perform at the Juvenile Detention Center. And at the Juvenile Detention Center, there's probably like about 13 kids in this room.
Sure.
And Breno started performing as if it was thousands of people.
Wow.
And then the students, at first they were like, okay, what is this guy really about? You know, they
skeptical.
Yeah, skeptical. And then once he started rapping, everything changed. They were all into it. They were, the whole atmosphere in that building changed, in that room changed. But then he starts talking about Jesus, and then he started connecting the gospel to it, and you just see how it connected with each student.
Yeah.
And how the way they were impacted. And it was just so amazing.
Wow.
It was so amazing. And then the next day we did the concert at Lifeline it was a free concert, anybody could come. And again, it was just such an amazing thing, and we had all these kids jumping and loving it, and and then now we're gonna have it again here in February, and the kids from last year that heard Breno, they're excited to hear him again. And so just really trying to expose Christian hip hop to our students, and for them to know, hey, you don't have to listen to the garbage, you know. There's other music, and it's quality music, and it'll influence you in a good way.
You know, it's kind of cool hearing that too, because another thing, you know, we're kind of about too is that there's a lot of different options for ministry, creative ways to reach people, right? In their skill sets. You know, me and Cody, we're engineers. Absolutely. You know, we're not traditional, you know, missionaries. Maybe not, you know, our backgrounds aren't like church planters, but we're able to use our skills in ministry. And even just hearing that, like, you're a rapper, you know, maybe not your traditional, you know, ministry, but wow, what an impact it can have.
Yeah. And cool. I feel like when we say missionary, we have narrowed it down to people that just are overseas. But no, that's not missionary. Is anybody who believes in Jesus. You are a missionary wherever you are at, right?
Yeah, that's good stuff. I think there's so many examples there. Like, you know, we talk about longevity of the ministry and the changing over time, and then now this is just a continuation of that. And the methods are changing, the message is the same. You talked about a few different programs. You know, you've got the construction program where you're actually training guys on actual trade skills. Yeah. And you guys like remodel properties right here in Elkhart. I know you've helped us tremendously in hosting. We had a short-term worker come through a couple years ago and needed a place for him to stay a few weeks, and you guys had, we got some availability. So he stayed with you guys at one of the houses. That was really helpful. But, you know, the T-shirt program, the graphic design, And what other programs are you seeing? So I know you've got kind of your finger on the pulse of the needs of the community. Are there other programs kind of on the horizon that excite you, or things that you're seeing coming down the pipe that you're interested in?
Yeah. So right now, we're focusing a lot on how to reach the youth. But one of our goals too in the near future is providing classes for our parents. You know, the way the building is built right now is that there's 3 classrooms that are separate from all of our programming where the kids are going to be at, where adults can go in, and it'll be a way where we can provide financial peace classes, GED classes, English as a second language, parenting classes for parents. And one of the biggest problems a lot of times that parents have is like they can't find childcare, so they can't go to classes. But now, when we're going to be providing classes, is your child is going to be at Lifeline, and you can go to the classes. So
That's awesome.
That's cool.
And with that, we put on a Christmas store every December, where we buy quality items, very quality items, and then we sell them at 20 cents at the dollar. And so the most expensive thing we have is $10, but and that's like JBL speakers, AirPods, bikes, you know, those are $10. We sell them for $10.
Wow.
But the prices range from $1 to $10. And the caregiver is able to come and spend up to $10 per child that they have. But with those $10, they can buy a multitude of presents. And what that does, it empowers the caregiver, and it gives them dignity. You know, a lot of times we just want to give a family free stuff for Christmas, but a lot of times what happens with that method is that maybe the parent or caregiver feels less than because they weren't able to provide it for the child themselves. So the way the Christmas store works as a way where the caregiver can feel like, man, I did this for my child. I bought this for my child. And at an affordable rate, you know, and it's quality too. It's not just cheap items.
Neat.
And we have a whole wrapping station where we'll wrap their presents, but then the caregiver gets to write on the from and to, so it can be in their handwriting. So yeah, it's just amazing. And we're connecting like the parenting classes with the Christmas store. So if a parent finishes a class, and graduates from a class, then we'll sponsor one of their kids for the Christmas store or something like that. So, yeah.
It's awesome. Just think about all these programs, got a lot going on. You know, you're in a variety of schools. What's the staffing situation like? I mean, how are you getting all this done?
Yeah.
I know you've talked about interns kind of offline. We talked about interns that you've had. Is that only during the summer? Is it all year? Like, what's that look like?
Yeah, so we have year-long internships and just summer internships. But the biggest thing that helps us get a lot of interns is that we provide housing. And so our interns, they don't have to look for a house if they want to come work for us. They don't have to pay bills. They don't have to worry about those things. Every house is furnished. It has Wi-Fi. It has laundry. Beds. So all they have to literally bring is just their clothes and toiletries and their bed covers, and they come work for us. Yeah, so we're able to. The internship program has just grown tremendously in the past few years, and another thing that has helped us out a lot is that we provide paraprofessionals for Elkhart Community Schools. And so we have a contract with Elkhart Community Schools where our interns are placed in one of the schools that we are partnered with, Roosevelt, Mary Beck, or Munger, and they are placed there and they help with whatever the school needs, whether it be tutoring kids, whether it be in a teacher's aid, whether it be with behavioral things. And they're placed in those schools. And then they're there for 4 hours, and then they come to our after-school programs afterwards. So that model has worked really, really well. And because now our interns, they get to see the kids during school and then after school.
Back to that consistency of the relationship.
Yes. Yeah. And for our interns, not only are they ministering to the kids, but they're also ministering to the staff at the schools. because not every staff member at the school is a believer, right? So they get to be a light there in the midst of in the schools.
That's excellent.
There's so many awesome things that are going on there at Lifeline. And I think we could probably talk for hours and hours about all the different programs you guys have. And it's amazing to see how the Lord's using you guys, preparing and growing, and the growth that you guys are having, and the different opportunities the Lord's giving you. You know, one thing I like to kind of ask, especially with all your experience working with youth and working with the next generation, how do you, what are you kind of getting the impression of how the next generation or how these youth are thinking about ministry, or what's going through their mind? What are you kind of observing in that?
Yeah, I think this just next generation really cares about and is passionate about the things that are going on in the world in terms of fighting for justice and helping those in need. So I think it's very positive in terms of, I think they're seeing that and they want to do something about it, right? So I'm excited that because they are so exposed to everything now. They're exposed to what's happening in the world, that they're seeing all the problems in the world, but at the same time, they have so much information that they're also seeking truth and not fake, and just authenticity.
Yeah.
So that's what excites me about the next generation in terms of that they're passionate, they want to do something about it, but they're also seeking just for real truth.
Yeah.
Not something cookie cutter, not not sugar on something, but like not sugaring things up, but like just the truth, and that's where Jesus comes in.
Yeah.
Because Jesus is the truth, right? And so I'm excited for that.
Awesome.
I mean, like with your story and where you're at now and all that God's done and continues to do, you know, we've seen here at Sunset, you know, people come to us and serve with us who have a variety of skills, but they're also coming from different places in their careers. Like Mike and I came straight out of college. We've got guys that come mid-career, you know, because they're feeling like, what am I doing in my career for eternity? You know, there's that absence of like an eternal impact. And, you know, especially engineers, like, okay, maybe we're making a good salary, but there's very little visible eternal fruit here. So we're, you know, part of our audience is, you know, at different places in their careers. But what would you say to someone who maybe is on the fence of considering ministry and feeling maybe the Lord nudging them, like, you need to think about this. You need to explore this. What would you say to someone in that process? Yeah,
I would say it takes me back to the verse in Acts where it talks about just sharing the gospel in Jerusalem and into the uttermost parts of the world, right? But it goes from like Jerusalem, Judea, and I believe to Samaria, and then to the uttermost parts of the world. I think you first have to be faithful where you're at. You know, because you are a missionary wherever you are at. So whether it be in your office, whether it be in your factory, whether it be in your fast food restaurant, wherever you are placed, that's where you have to be faithful first. Then if God is calling you somewhere else, that's where you can start doing your research. That's where you can start exploring different things of, okay, where do you think the Lord is leading me to? But you have to be faithful in the little things. I'm a big believer that us as Christians, we have to have the most work ethic, right? We have to have the most integrity, and we have to show that to the world. So wherever you are at, I would encourage you just be faithful there first and be a missionary there first. And because if you are faithful with the little, God will give you more, right? So be faithful where you're at, and then if God is calling you somewhere, then you can start making those, exploring those options that you have, and letting the Lord lead you. But again, also with your employer, wherever you are at, making sure that you're not burning bridges, right? And making sure you're being a person of character, and making those transitions well. And because we have to be a little bit more thinking of those things, because we want to love those people well.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
really important too. Like I've had a few conversations with guys in my life, friends, and maybe they're feeling they want to lead up to something. They're not quite sure what they're trying to lead up to, but they're trying to pursue something, and kind of losing sight of the fact, like, also where you're at right now. How do you be a Christ follower right where you're at, and like trusting the Lord? He's calling you maybe to something else, and there's other opportunities out there, but there's also the reality of Lord has you in this spot right now. As you're researching, maybe thinking about your next steps, how do you be a light for Christ right there?
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, and through that, opportunities will pop up.
Yeah.
You know, you never know what the Lord might do through those different,
Yeah.
through you just being faithful.
Yeah.
And again, we don't have to wait for a title.
Yeah.
We don't have to wait for a platform. We don't have to wait for something big, or, you know, like, it's just right here.
Yeah.
Just wherever you are at, be faithful.
Wow.
That's what God has called us to, just be faithful. So
One of the things we always like to ask is, do you have any resources you could point people to, maybe in terms of books that have been helpful for you, or blogs? You talked to some about the Christian hip hop, and that's been helpful. But are there other resources you'd like to point people to learn more about ministry or grow?
yeah, there's a book that I read at Word of Life. Man, I'm gonna have to get back to you guys on that, 'cause I have it at the tip of my tongue. But it's all about just what we were just talking about right now. That a lot of people are always, oh man, what's my future gonna be like, or what am I gonna do next, or but it's just about being faithful at the moment. You know, being faithful wherever you are at, and that's what the book encompasses. Also, Don't Waste Your Life by John Piper, or
That's a good one.
and I think somebody else just did a book of that, J.D. Greer. That, and he got inspiration from Don't Waste Your Life as well. So I would say those books by John Piper or J.D. Greer would be very
Put
helpful.
those in the show
Yeah,
notes, and we'll
get
get
that
that
in
other
there.
one from you too.
David, thank you so much for taking time.
Yeah.
If people want to learn more about Lifeline Ministries, where would they go to do that?
Yep, you guys can go to elkhartlifeline.com. You guys can also follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Lifeline Youth Ministries. We're always posting on there, and we're always updating our social media on what's happening at Lifeline.
Awesome. David, it was a pleasure talking to you. Really encouraging, blessing to hear what the Lord's done in your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me, guys.